Businessman sees waitress helping his disabled son and transforms her life. Michael Thompson felt his chest tighten every time he looked at his son. The 12-year-old boy was sitting quietly in the wheelchair, absent-mindedly pushing the pieces of chicken around his plate, while the other restaurant customers chatted animatedly around them. It was then that a piece of food got stuck in Nathan's throat, and the boy started coughing desperately. Michael rose from his chair but didn't know what to do. A young waitress dropped the tray she was carrying and ran over to them, kneeling beside the wheelchair without a care for the white uniform that would get dirty on the floor. "Easy now, sweetheart. Breathe slowly," she whispered, rubbing the boy's back with soft, precise movements. "I'm going to help you. It's all right." Michael stood frozen, watching the scene. The young woman showed no sign of nervousness or rush. On the contrary, her hands moved with assurance as she helped Nathan lean his body forward, making it easier to breathe. Other customers began to look in their direction, some with expressions of discomfort, others with poorly disguised curiosity. "That's it, slowly," the waitress continued. "Now let's try to cough one more time, just gently." What impressed Michael the most was when the young woman began to hum softly a melody he recognized immediately. It was a song that Jennifer, his late wife, used to sing to Nathan when he was little and got restless. A simple song, almost a lullaby, that she said she had invented especially for her son. How could this stranger know that song? Nathan stopped coughing little by little, his eyes fixed on the waitress's face. Michael saw something he hadn't witnessed in a long time, a small smile forming on his son's lips. The boy raised his right hand, which had limited movement, and lightly touched the young woman's arm. "Very good, my dear," she said, smiling back. "Now let's drink a little water very slowly." The waitress picked up the glass and brought it to the boy carefully, holding his head with her other hand. Nathan took a few sips, his eyes still fixed on her face. Michael noticed that his son seemed more alert than he had been in recent months. "Thank you," Michael managed to say, his voice coming out hoarser than he intended. "I didn't know what to do." The young woman stood up, straightening her dirty apron. She had brown hair tied in a simple ponytail and dark eyes that conveyed an almost maternal calmness. She couldn't have been more than 25, but there was something in her demeanor that suggested experience with difficult situations. "It was nothing, sir. It happens often," she replied naturally. "Nathan just needs to eat more slowly. Isn't that right, sweetheart?" Michael felt a shiver. She knew the boy's name, but he didn't remember introducing himself or mentioning his son while ordering. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, "How do you know his name?" he asked, a little suspicious. The waitress hesitated for a moment, as if she had spoken without thinking. She looked at Nathan, who continued to watch her with unusual attention, then turned her eyes back to Michael. "I'm sorry, I worked at Mercy General Hospital a few years ago. I remember taking care of Nathan when he was hospitalized after the accident," she explained quietly. "My name is Rachel." Michael felt the world spin slightly. Mercy General Hospital was where Nathan had spent 3 months after the car accident that changed their lives forever. The same accident that had taken Jennifer from him and left Nathan paralyzed from the waist down. It had been such a painful period that Michael avoided thinking about those days. "Did you take care of him at the hospital?" he asked, trying to find some memory of the young woman in his fragmented recollection of that terrible time. "Yes, I was a nurse's aide in the pediatric ward," replied Rachel. "Nathan stayed in room 412. He was very quiet, hardly ever spoke, but he liked it when I sang to him. Now it made sense. The song, the ease with which she had handled the situation, the way Nathan had reacted to her presence. Michael vaguely remembered a young woman who appeared in the room during some shifts, but back then he was so immersed in his own pain and guilt to pay attention to anyone else. "I remember you," Nathan said suddenly, his voice weak but clear. They were the first words the boy had spoken spontaneously in weeks. Rachel knelt down again to his level, her eyes shining. "And I remember you, my dear. You draw very well, remember? Or very well. You made that beautiful drawing of a bird for me." Nathan nodded slightly, an almost imperceptible gesture, but one that Michael noticed. It had been months since his son had shown such interest in external stimuli. "What are you doing here?" asked Michael. "I thought you worked at the hospital." A shadow passed over Rachel's eyes. She stood up slowly, straightening her apron again. "I left the hospital 2 years ago," she replied simply. "I work here now." There was something in the way she said it that suggested it wasn't a voluntary change, but Michael didn't want to press the matter at that moment. He noticed other customers were starting to watch the conversation with curiosity, and he didn't like being the center of attention. "Well, thank you again," he said, returning to his chair. "Nathan, let's finish our dinner." Rachel waved to the boy and went back to her work, but Michael noticed she glanced discreetly in their direction several times during the rest of the meal. Nathan ate more that night than he had in the past 3 days, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't resist when Michael helped him transfer from the wheelchair to the car. During the drive home, Nathan broke the usual silence. "Dad, can we go back there tomorrow?" Michael looked in the rearview mirror and saw his son's eyes reflecting the streetlights. There was life in that gaze, something he hadn't seen in months. "Why do you want to go back there?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Rachel used to sing to me at the hospital when I was sad," Nathan said softly. "She said my mother was watching over me through the music." Michael felt his chest tighten. In the 2 years since the accident, he and Nathan had rarely spoken about Jennifer. It was too painful for both of them. He had assumed avoiding the subject was the best way to protect his son, but now he wondered if he hadn't made a mistake. When they arrived at the house on the Upper East Side, Dorothy, the housekeeper who looked after Nathan during the day, greeted them at the door. She was a woman in her early 50s who had worked for Michael for 5 years, since before the accident. She was efficient and careful, but Michael knew there was something more in her care for the family. "How was dinner?" she asked, helping Nathan out of the car. "We met someone we know," Nathan replied excitedly. "Rachel from the hospital." Dorothy looked at Michael with a curious expression, but he didn't want to elaborate. It was late, and Nathan needed to take his medication and go to sleep. Later, after Nathan was in bed, Michael sat in his office with a glass of bourbon, thinking about the evening's conversation. There was something about his son's reaction that intrigued him. Nathan hadn't shown interest in anything for so long that seeing that spark of life in his eyes was both comforting and worrying. He picked up the phone and dialed Mercy General Hospital, asking to speak with the administration. After a few transfers, he managed to confirm that Rachel Wilson had indeed worked there as a nurse's aide until 2 years ago. The employee who helped him was vague about the reasons for her departure, mentioning only a staff reorganization. Michael knew that usually meant budget cuts, but something about how the woman hesitated before answering made him suspect there were more details to the story. The next morning, Nathan asked again to go back to the restaurant. Michael tried to change the subject, suggesting other places, but the boy insisted with a determination he hadn't shown in months. "She sang Mommy's song," said Nathan, looking directly into his father's eyes for the first time in a long while. No one else knew that song. Michael felt a lump in his throat. It was true. Jennifer had never sung that song for anyone else, at least not in his presence. How did Rachel know it? He decided to go back to the restaurant that night, more out of curiosity than anything else. When they arrived, Rachel wasn't working. The maitre d' explained that she had Tuesdays off, but Michael noticed Nathan becoming visibly disappointed. "Can we come back tomorrow?" the boy asked on the way home. "Nathan, you can't become obsessed with someone we barely know," said Michael, trying to be kind but firm. "She's not a stranger," Nathan replied. "She took care of me when I was scared." There was something in his son's voice that reminded Michael of how Jennifer always said Nathan was more perceptive than people realized. Maybe the boy was sensing something that he himself couldn't grasp. The following night, they returned to the restaurant. Rachel was there, serving other tables with the same quiet efficiency Michael had noticed the first time. When she saw them coming in, her face lit up with a genuine smile. "Nathan," she said, approaching their table, "it's so good to see you again." "Hi, Rachel," replied the boy, his voice clearer than Michael had heard him speak in weeks. During dinner, Michael watched the interaction between the two. Rachel passed by their table more often than necessary, always stopping to exchange a few words with Nathan. She asked about his drawings, about what he'd been watching on television, about his medications. Simple questions, but they showed a genuine interest. Nathan answered them all with more enthusiasm than he had shown for any subject in the past few months. Michael noticed that his son ate with more appetite when Rachel was around, and he even asked for dessert, which was rare. When she brought a small ice cream for Nathan, the boy asked, "Rachel, can you sing that song again?" She hesitated, glancing quickly at Michael as if asking for permission. He nodded slightly, curious to hear the melody Jennifer used to sing once more. Rachel bent down beside Nathan's chair and began to hum softly, so low that only the three of them could hear. It was exactly the same melody, with the same gentle cadence that Jennifer had used. Michael felt his eyes well up, but also a strange sense of peace he hadn't felt in 2 years. "My mother used to sing that song," Nathan said to Rachel. "I know, sweetheart," she replied softly. "She taught it to me." Michael looked at her in surprise. How was that possible? Jennifer had only been conscious for a few hours at the hospital before she passed away, and he had been present for most of that time. "When did she teach it to you?" he asked. Rachel seemed to realize she had said something she shouldn't have. She stood up quickly, her face flushed. "I need to get back to work," she said, avoiding his gaze. "Excuse me." Michael was intrigued by her reaction, but he didn't want to press the matter in front of Nathan. When they finished dinner and were leaving, he saw Rachel talking with the manager near the cash register. The man seemed to be scolding her for something, gesturing irritably. In the car, Nathan was visibly more animated. "Dad, can I ask Rachel to come over to the house someday?" he asked. Michael hesitated. The idea of bringing a stranger into his home, especially one who seemed to have secrets about his late wife, made him uncomfortable. On the other hand, he couldn't deny that Nathan had seemed more alive since they'd met her. "I'm not sure that would be appropriate," he answered carefully. "Please," Nathan insisted. "She said she could teach me some exercises I learned at the hospital." "What exercises?" "To move my arms better, and to strengthen my back. She said if I practice every day, I could improve." Michael knew the doctors had been clear about Nathan's limitations. Although some movement could be improved with physical therapy, there was no expectation of significant recovery. He didn't want his son to develop unrealistic hopes. "Nathan, you know your condition isn't going to change much, right? The doctors explained that." "I know," the boy said, "but she said even small improvements make a difference, and that my mother would be happy if I tried." Again, the mention of his mother through Rachel. Michael decided he needed to speak with the young woman in private to clarify the situation. The next day, he returned to the restaurant alone at lunchtime. Rachel was there, serving a table of executives near the window. When she saw him, she seemed surprised and slightly nervous. "Mr. Thompson," she greeted him as he approached. "Nathan didn't come today." "I need to speak with you," Michael said without preamble. "When you finish your shift, could you meet me over there in the park across the street?" She hesitated, but agreed. Michael spent the next 2 hours at his company, trying to concentrate on work, but without success. The questions about Rachel and her connection to Jennifer wouldn't leave his mind. At 5 in the afternoon, he was sitting on a park bench when he saw Rachel leaving the restaurant. She had changed out of her uniform into a simple blouse and jeans and carried a worn bag on her shoulder. She approached him with hesitant steps. "Mr. Thompson, you wanted to talk to me." "Please, have a seat," said Michael, indicating the bench beside him. "I want to better understand your relationship with my family." Rachel sat down, keeping a respectful distance. Her hands were folded in her lap, and she avoided looking directly at him. "I already explained I took care of Nathan at the hospital. That doesn't explain how you know the song my wife used to sing to him, a song she said she made up." Rachel was silent for a long moment. Michael could see she was wrestling with an internal battle about how much to reveal. "Your wife didn't make up that song," she finally said, her voice soft. "What do you mean?" "It was a song I used to sing to the children at the hospital, a melody my own mother taught me when I was little," Rachel explained, finally looking at him. When Nathan arrived, he was very frightened and traumatized. Nothing could calm him down, so I started singing to him. Michael felt a pang of something like relief mixed with disappointment. So there was nothing magical or mysterious about the situation. It was just a coincidence. But Nathan said you told him my wife taught you the song. Rachel took a deep breath before continuing. Your wife was conscious for a few hours that last night, Mr. Thompson. You had stepped out to get some papers the doctors asked for. She called me into the room and said she had heard me singing to Nathan. Michael remembered that night. The doctors had said Jennifer was stable, so he had felt safe being away for a few hours. When she returned, she was unconscious again and never woke up. What else did she say? She asked me to keep singing to Nathan even after she was gone, said Rachel, her eyes welling up. She said the music helped Nathan remember he was loved even when he was scared, and she asked me to look after both of you if I ever had the chance. Michael felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. That was exactly the kind of thing Jennifer would say, always thinking of others even in her most difficult moments. Why did you never look for me afterward? Why didn't you tell me this before? You were destroyed, Rachel replied softly. I was just a young nurse's aide. I didn't think it was my place to intrude on your lives. Besides, I left the hospital shortly after. Why did you leave? Rachel hesitated again, as if deciding how much to reveal. There were some problems. Personal matters that interfered with my work, she said vaguely. Michael realized she didn't want to go into details, so he didn't press, but there were more questions he needed to ask. Nathan wants you to come to the house to help him with exercises. Do you really think you can help? Yes, I can, she replied with more confidence. I learned a lot about pediatric physical therapy when I worked at the hospital. There are simple exercises that can improve Nathan's upper body strength and motor coordination. The doctors never mentioned that. Sometimes doctors focus so much on what can't be cured that they forget what can be improved, said Rachel. Nathan has the potential to gain more independence in the movement of his arms and torso. That would make a huge difference in his quality of life. Michael watched her as she spoke. There was genuine passion in her voice when she discussed caring for children. It was obvious she really knew her stuff. Would you look after Nathan a few afternoons a week? He asked. I can pay for your time. It's not a question of payment, Rachel replied quickly. I would do it from the heart. But I need to warn you that I can only come after my shift at the restaurant, and not every day. That would be enough, said Michael, at least to start. They agreed that Rachel would visit Nathan 3 times a week after work. Michael gave her the address and his phone number, feeling strangely nervous about the decision he had just made. When he got home that night, Nathan was in the living room watching television with Dorothy. The housekeeper looked at Michael with curiosity when he mentioned that Rachel would be coming to visit them. A waitress? Asked Dorothy, her voice full of disapproval. Michael, are you sure that's wise? She's a physical therapist, Michael lied, not wanting to go into details about Rachel's past at the hospital. So Nathan needs specialized help. There are qualified professionals who do that work, insisted Dorothy. Why not hire someone with proper references? Michael noticed the tension in her voice. Dorothy had always been protective of the family, especially after the loss of Jennifer, but there was something else in her reaction that he couldn't identify. Nathan already knows and trusts her, he explained. That's more important than any diploma. Dorothy didn't seem convinced, but she didn't argue further. Nathan, on the other hand, was thrilled when he heard the news. When is she coming? He asked eagerly. Tomorrow afternoon, replied Michael. But Nathan, you need to understand that this is serious work. Rachel is going to teach you exercises. It's not just a social visit. I know, said the boy. I'll try very hard. That night, Michael had trouble sleeping. He kept thinking about the conversation with Rachel and the last words of Jennifer that he had never heard. There was something comforting about knowing that his wife had thought of them until the very end, but it was also painful to realize how much time he had lost by isolating himself in his grief. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It's a great help to us who are just getting started. Now back to the story. The following afternoon, Rachel arrived promptly at 4 o'clock. She was wearing comfortable clothes and carried a small bag with some materials. Dorothy greeted her at the door with professional courtesy, but Michael noticed a certain coldness in her manner. "Nathan is in the living room," said Dorothy. "Mr. Michael isn't home from the office yet." "That's fine," replied Rachel. "I can start with the warm-up exercises." Michael had decided to leave work early to be there for the first session, but he got stuck in a meeting. When he finally got home, he found Nathan in the living room moving his arms while Rachel guided him. "Very good, Nathan," she was saying. "Now try to hold it for 5 seconds. That's it." Michael stood in the doorway watching without being noticed. Nathan was more focused and determined than he had seen him in months. His arms, which usually rested limply at his sides, were moving with purpose and coordination. "Look, Dad," said Nathan when he noticed Michael there. "I managed to lift both arms at the same time." It was a simple movement, something any healthy person would do without thinking, but Michael knew the effort it represented for Nathan. His eyes filled with tears that he tried to hide. "Very good, son," he managed to say. "Rachel said that if I practice every day, I might learn to transfer myself from the wheelchair on my own." Nathan continued excitedly. Michael looked at Rachel questioningly. Was that possible? The doctors had never mentioned that possibility. "It will take time," she explained, "and a lot of effort from Nathan. But yes, it's possible to significantly improve his independence for basic activities." During the next hour, Michael watched Rachel work with Nathan. She was patient, encouraging, and clearly knew what she was doing. The exercises were simple but specific, focused on strengthening muscles that Nathan still had control over. "Why didn't the physical therapist at the hospital ever teach us this?" Michael asked when they had finished. "They probably did," Rachel replied diplomatically. "But at the time, Nathan was going through a lot of emotional trauma. Sometimes the body doesn't respond well when the mind is suffering." It was a kind explanation, but Michael knew she was being polite. The truth was that he had been so immersed in his own pain that he probably hadn't paid proper attention to the medical instructions. After Rachel left, Nathan was visibly tired but happy. During dinner, he talked more than he had in weeks, telling Dorothy all about the exercises and his plans for improvement. "She's very good with the boy," Dorothy commented later, after Nathan had gone to sleep, but Michael detected a hesitation in her voice. "But?" "I don't know, Michael. Just be careful," she said. "Sometimes people come into our lives at vulnerable times for reasons we don't immediately understand." Michael knew Dorothy was being protective, but her words planted a seed of doubt in his mind. What did he really know about Rachel? Why had she left the hospital? And why was a qualified physical therapist working as a waitress? The following week, Rachel came 3 times as agreed. With each visit, Nathan showed small improvements. He could hold light objects for longer, move his shoulders with a greater range of motion, and even began to lean forward and to the sides with more control. Michael was impressed with her dedication. Rachel always arrived on time, brought new exercises each session, and worked with Nathan for a full hour without rushing. She never talked about payment, although Michael always insisted on giving her something for her work. "May I ask you something?" Michael said on a Thursday, when Rachel was packing up her materials after the session. "Of course." "Why did you leave the hospital? And why are you working as a waitress if you're qualified to work in healthcare?" Rachel stopped packing her things and was silent for a moment. When she looked at him, Michael saw pain in her eyes. "I lost my son 3 years ago," she said quietly. "He was 8 years old and passed away from leukemia. During his treatment, I practically lived at the hospital for 2 years. After he was gone, I couldn't work there anymore. It was too painful." Michael felt as if he'd been punched. He knew about loss, but losing a child was something he couldn't even imagine. "I'm so sorry," he said, and he truly meant it. "I shouldn't have asked." "It's all right," she replied, finishing packing her things. "Actually, working with Nathan has been helping me. It reminds me of why I chose to care for children in the first place." "How do you do it?" asked Michael. "How can you care for other children after a loss like that?" Rachel smiled sadly. "Because I know that somewhere there's a desperate mother like I was, needing someone to care for her child with love. And I know my Ethan would be happy knowing I'm helping other children. Ethan was her son's name. Michael felt a strange connection with Rachel in that moment. Both had lost people they loved. Both were trying to find a way through the pain. "Nathan isn't my biological son, did you know?" said Michael, surprising himself with the confession. Rachel looked at him curiously. "Jennifer couldn't have children," he continued. "Nathan was adopted when he was 2 years old, but I loved him from the first moment, as if he were my own flesh and blood." "Love is love," Rachel said simply. "Biological or not, you are his father." They were silent for a moment, sharing a mutual understanding about love and loss that needed no words. "Rachel, can I make you a proposal?" Michael said suddenly. "What kind of proposal?" "How about you leave the restaurant job and come work here at the house as Nathan's full-time physical therapist?" Rachel looked surprised. "Mr. Thompson, I don't have a physical therapy degree. I only have practical experience." "You know more about how to help Nathan than any certified professional I've ever met," said Michael. "And he trusts you. That's worth more than any piece of paper." "I don't know. It's a very generous offer, but—" "Think about it," Michael interrupted. "You don't have to decide now, but consider the possibility. Nathan is improving in a way I didn't think possible, and you clearly have a gift for it." Rachel promised to think about the offer. That evening, after she had left, Michael talked with Nathan about the possibility. "That would be amazing," the boy said immediately. "Rachel could help me every day." "It would be a big commitment," Michael explained. "She would have to leave her current job." "But she'd be happier here," Nathan said with the simple certainty of children. "At the restaurant, she always seems a little sad. Here she smiles for real." Michael was struck by his son's perception. It was true that Rachel seemed lighter and more genuine when she was working with Nathan than when he saw her waiting tables. Over the weekend, Michael decided to go to the restaurant alone to speak with Rachel in a neutral setting. When he arrived there on Saturday evening, he was greeted by the manager, a middle-aged man with a stern expression. "Good evening, sir. Table for one?" "Actually, I'd like to speak with one of your employees, Rachel Wilson." The manager's expression changed immediately. "Rachel is currently having some work-related issues," he said coldly. "If you have any concerns about her service, I can take down your complaint." "It's not a complaint," said Michael. "It's a personal matter." "I'm sorry, but I can't allow employees to receive visitors during work hours," replied the manager, "especially Rachel, who is already in a disciplinary process." Michael was intrigued. "Disciplinary process? Why?" "May I know what the problem with her is?" "Internal company matters," said the manager evasively. "If you'd like to have dinner, I can arrange a table. Otherwise, I'll have to ask you to leave." Michael decided not to push further, but he was worried. What had Rachel done to be in trouble at work? Could it be something related to her absences to take care of Nathan? On Sunday, he called Rachel. "Hello? Rachel, it's Michael Thompson. How are you?" "Hello, Mr. Thompson. I'm fine, thank you. I went to the restaurant yesterday and the manager said you're having work problems. Is it true?" There was a long pause before she answered. "It's complicated," she said finally. "Do you want to talk about it?" Another pause. "I'd rather not talk about it on the phone. Can we meet at the park tomorrow after work?" They agreed to meet at 5 in the afternoon. Michael spent the whole Sunday thinking about the situation, worried about Rachel and how it might affect Nathan. On Monday, he was at the park 15 minutes early. Rachel arrived on time, but Michael noticed she looked more tired than usual, with deep, dark circles under her eyes. "Thank you for your concern," she said as she sat next to him on the bench. "What's happening at the restaurant?" Rachel sighed deeply. "Some customers complained about my behavior," she explained. "They said I was being too familiar with a disabled child, that I was making other people feel uncomfortable." Michael felt anger growing in his chest. "Are they talking about the day you helped Nathan? And the other times you came in? Some people thought it was inappropriate for me to interact with Nathan so much, especially after I started singing to him," said Rachel, her voice full of hurt. "The manager said I was overstepping my duties and making other customers uncomfortable." That's ridiculous, Michael burst out. You were helping a child. I know, but they are right about one thing, said Rachel. I was getting emotionally involved. Nathan reminds me so much of my Ethan that sometimes I forget where I am. Michael saw tears forming in her eyes and felt the urge to hug her, but he restrained himself. What's going to happen now? I'm being transferred to the graveyard shift, she said. It's a punishment in disguise. They know I can't work the graveyard shift because of my mother. Your mother? She's sick and needs care during the night. It's one of the reasons I need the restaurant job. The health insurance helps pay for her treatments. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Rachel wasn't just a waitress by choice. She was making sacrifices for her family, just like he was for Nathan. Accept my offer, Michael said immediately. Come work with us full-time. I'll pay a better salary than the restaurant, and you can include your mother in our health insurance. Rachel looked at him with surprise. Mr. Thompson, that's very generous, but I can't accept charity. It's not charity, insisted Michael. It's a job. Nathan is improving more in 3 weeks with you than he did in 2 years with other professionals. You have a real talent for this. And what if it doesn't work out? What if I can't help Nathan in the long term? And what if I can? Michael countered. Nathan is already happier and stronger. That's priceless to me. Rachel fell silent, clearly considering the proposal. Michael could see she was tempted, but also worried. Can I have a few days to think about it? Of course, but Rachel, whatever your decision about the job, don't stop coming to see Nathan. He counts on your visits. I would never abandon Nathan, she said firmly. He means a lot to me. When Michael got home that night, he found Dorothy in the kitchen preparing dinner. She seemed more tense than usual. How was your day? She asked without looking at him. I found out Rachel is having problems at work because of the way she treated Nathan at the restaurant, explained Michael. Dorothy stopped chopping the vegetables and finally looked at him. What kind of problems? Customers complained that she was being too familiar with Nathan. The manager transferred her to the graveyard shift as punishment. Maybe that's for the best, Dorothy said calmly. Nathan is getting too attached to her. Michael was surprised by the coldness in her voice. Dorothy, she's helping Nathan in an incredible way. Why don't you like her? Dorothy sighed and turned to face him completely. Michael, don't you think it's strange for a young woman to appear out of nowhere with so much interest in your family? She knows intimate details about Jennifer, gets easy access to Nathan, and now she's having problems at work. Doesn't it seem a little too convenient? Dorothy's suggestion hit Michael like a bucket of cold water. Was it possible that Rachel had ulterior motives? But then he remembered the genuine pain in her eyes when she talked about Ethan, the delicate way she treated Nathan, her constant refusal to accept payment. I think you're being paranoid, he said finally. Maybe, Dorothy agreed. But promise me you'll be careful. Nathan has already lost his mother. He can't get hurt again. It was a fair argument, and Michael promised to keep an eye out, but deep in his heart, he felt that Rachel was exactly what she seemed to be, a wounded woman trying to heal her own pain by helping others. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. On Tuesday, Rachel came for her regular session with Nathan. She seemed more downcast than usual, and Nathan noticed immediately. Rachel, are you sad? The boy asked during the exercises. A little, my dear, she admitted, but I'm happy when I'm here with you. Why are you sad? Rachel looked at Michael, who was watching from the door, asking for silent permission to explain. I'm having some problems at work, she said simply. Why did you help him that day at the restaurant? Asked Nathan. Because it's what you do when someone needs help, Rachel replied, and because you are special to me. Nathan was thoughtful for a moment. My father offered you a job, he said suddenly. Michael was surprised. He hadn't mentioned the offer to Nathan since Sunday. How do you know that? He asked. I heard you talking yesterday, Nathan admitted without seeming guilty. Rachel, please take the job. That way you can be with us every day and you won't have any more problems with mean people. The simplicity of Nathan's request touched both Michael and Rachel. There was something pure in the boy's desire to protect someone who cared for him. Nathan is right, said Michael. The offer still stands. Rachel looked at them both, clearly moved. "Are you sure? It's a very important decision." "I'm sure," said Michael. "And you?" "Yes," she replied, a genuine smile appearing on her face for the first time that week. "I accept the offer." Nathan let out a little cry of joy and tried to clap, managing to bring his hands together a few times, something he hadn't been able to do for months. "See," he said proudly, "I'm getting better already." In the following days, Rachel organized her departure from the restaurant and began working with Nathan full-time. The difference was immediate. With more time available, she could create a more comprehensive and consistent exercise program. Nathan began to make remarkable progress. Beyond the physical improvements, he was more communicative, more interested in the world around him, and even asked to start drawing again, something he hadn't done since the car accident. Michael watched everything with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. How had he let his son languish for so long when help was available? Rachel wasn't just rehabilitating Nathan physically, she was also bringing back his will to live. One morning, about 2 weeks after Rachel started working at the house, Michael was in his office when he heard laughter coming from the living room. He peeked through the door and saw Nathan trying to play a card game with Rachel, using arm movements he couldn't manage before. "I won," said Nathan, managing to put his last card down on the table. "You're getting too clever," said Rachel, smiling. "Soon you'll be beating me at every game." "Rachel, can I ask you something?" said Nathan, his expression growing more serious. "Of course, sweetheart." "Do you miss Ethan?" Michael saw Rachel stiffen for a moment, but she answered honestly. "Every day," she said. "But you know what? Taking care of you helps me feel closer to him. It's like a part of the love I have for him can be shared with you." Nathan nodded as if he understood perfectly. "I think my mother would be happy knowing you're taking care of me," he said. "She always said that love never ends. It just finds new places to live." Michael had to step away from the door because he felt his eyes welling up. Dorothy really used to say that, and hearing Nathan repeat her words brought a wave of sweet and painful memories. Later that day, when Nathan was resting, Michael found Rachel in the kitchen preparing a healthy snack for the boy. "I want to thank you," he said. "For what?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "For bringing my son back," replied Michael. "For the last 2 years I felt like I had lost Nathan too, not physically but emotionally. You gave him back his life." Rachel stopped what she was doing and looked at him seriously. "Mr. Thompson, can I be frank with you?" "Of course." "You were lost too," she said gently. "Nathan senses that. He feels his father pulled away from him after the accident, and that hurts him more than any physical limitation." Michael felt as if she had touched an open wound. It was true, and he knew it. He had distanced himself from Nathan not just from pain, but from guilt. Guilt for not being able to save Dorothy, guilt for not preventing the accident, guilt for seeing Nathan every day and remembering what they had lost. "I don't know how to fix it," he admitted. "By starting over," said Rachel. "Nathan doesn't need you to be perfect. He just needs you to be present, truly present, not just physically." It was simple advice, but profound. Michael realized he had spent 2 years trying to protect Nathan from his own pain, when he should have been sharing the healing journey with him. That night, for the first time since the accident, Michael went into Nathan's room at bedtime and sat by the bed. "Dad?" said Nathan, surprised. "Is something wrong?" "No, son. I just wanted to talk with you before you went to sleep," said Michael. "Like we used to do before." Nathan smiled, clearly happy with the change in routine. "What do you want to talk about?" "About everything," said Michael. "About how your day was, about what you're feeling, about your plans for tomorrow. I want to hear it all." They talked for almost an hour, about exercises, about the drawings Nathan was making again, about a movie he wanted to watch. Simple conversation. But Michael realized he had missed it for a long time. "Dad?" said Nathan when Michael was getting up to leave. "Yes?" "Are you getting less sad?" Nathan's direct question caught him off guard, but he decided to be honest. "I'm trying, son. I still miss your mother very much, but I'm learning to be happy again." "I miss her too," said Nathan. but Rachel taught me that I can miss her and be happy at the same time." Again, the simple wisdom of a child surprised him. Nathan was more emotionally mature than Michael had given him credit for. "You like Rachel, don't you?" asked Michael. "A lot," Nathan answered without hesitation. "She makes me feel strong, and she makes you smile more too." Michael hadn't noticed he was smiling more, but Nathan was right. Rachel's presence in the house had brought a lightness that had been missing for a long time. In the following weeks, the household routine changed completely. Rachel arrived every morning at 8 and worked with Nathan until 5 in the afternoon. She created a structured program that included physical exercises, cognitive activities, and time for leisure and creativity. Nathan was clearly thriving. He could move around the house with more independence, his arms were stronger, and he even started helping with small household tasks, like organizing his own materials and helping to set the table for meals. But the most notable change was in his mood. Nathan laughed more, made jokes, and showed genuine interest in the activities and people around him. It was as if a switch had been flipped, bringing back the bright personality Michael remembered from before the accident. Michael also noticed changes in himself. He was coming home from work earlier, participating more in Nathan's activities, and even started talking about Jennifer more naturally, sharing happy memories instead of avoiding the subject completely. Rachel seemed to be flourishing too. The work with Nathan clearly gave her purpose and joy. She was creative in her approaches, always bringing new ideas and activities. More importantly, she had found a healthy balance between professionally caring for Nathan and being emotionally invested in his progress. Dorothy observed all these changes with a mixture of approval and unease. She was genuinely happy to see Nathan improve, but Michael noticed she often seemed lost in thought, as if she was struggling with something internally. One afternoon, Michael came home from work early and found Dorothy alone in the kitchen. Rachel had taken Nathan to the nearby park to practice maneuvering the wheelchair on different terrain. "Dorothy, are you all right?" he asked. "You seem worried lately." She hesitated before answering, clearly debating something with herself. "Michael, I need to talk to you about something," she said finally. "What is it?" "It's about Rachel." Michael felt a knot in his stomach. Ever since Rachel started working with them, he had noticed such a dramatic improvement in Nathan that he had begun to see her as a miracle. The idea that there could be a problem was disturbing. "What about Rachel?" Dorothy sat at the kitchen table and motioned for him to do the same. Her expression was serious and worried. "I did some checking into her past," she said quietly. "What kind of checking?" asked Michael, though he already suspected he wouldn't like the answer. "I spoke with some people who work at Mercy General Hospital. I wanted to verify her story to make sure Nathan was safe." Michael felt anger begin to grow. Dorothy had investigated Rachel behind his back. "And what did you find out?" "The story about her leaving because of her son's death is true," said Dorothy, "but it's not the full story." "Go on." "Rachel was fired from the hospital for inappropriate behavior," revealed Dorothy. "She was becoming overly attached to the children under her care, especially those in situations similar to what her own son had gone through." Michael felt as if the ground had moved beneath his feet. Inappropriate behavior like what? She became too emotionally involved, interfered with medical decisions, and in some cases was found sleeping in the children's rooms after her shifts were over, explained Dorothy. The hospital administration considered her psychologically unprepared to work in the pediatric ward. Michael tried to process this information. On one hand, it painted a worrying picture of someone who might be projecting her own pain onto other situations. On the other hand, it also suggested someone who cared deeply about the children's well-being. "Anything else?" "There are rumors that she was seen at the hospital several times during the period Nathan was admitted, even when she wasn't working," said Dorothy. "Some staff found her interest in your family specifically to be strange." This information was even more disturbing. Would it mean that Rachel had lied about the chance nature of her meeting with them at the restaurant? "Are you sure about this information?" "I spoke with 3 different people who confirmed similar versions," said Dorothy. "Michael, I don't want to cause trouble, but you need to consider the possibility that Rachel's intentions aren't completely pure." Michael got up from the table, feeling confused and betrayed. Nathan was improving so much, he seemed so happy. How could all of this be based on a lie? What do you think I should do? Talk to her, suggested Dorothy. Give her a chance to explain, but be careful. Nathan has already become very attached to her. Michael spent the rest of the afternoon thinking about the conversation. When Rachel and Nathan came back from the park, he watched their interaction with new eyes. Her dedication seemed genuine, but now he wondered if there was something more behind it. Nathan was beaming, telling him about how he had managed to navigate the wheelchair across the park grass by himself. It was real and meaningful progress, but Michael found himself questioning the motivations of the person who had made it possible. That night, after Nathan had gone to sleep, Michael decided to confront Rachel. She was in the living room organizing materials for the next day's activities. "Rachel, I need to talk to you about something important." She looked at him, immediately noticing the seriousness in his voice. "Of course. What is it?" "I received some information about your time at Mercy General Hospital that contradicts what you told me." Michael saw Rachel's face instantly pale. Her hands stopped organizing the materials, and she slowly sat down on the sofa. "What did you hear?" "That you were fired for inappropriate behavior, that you became overly involved with the patients, and that you were observing our family even when you weren't working." Rachel was silent for a long moment, her hands trembling slightly. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. "It's true," she admitted. Michael felt his heart sink, though part of him had expected this confirmation. "Why did you lie to me?" "Because I was afraid you wouldn't let me help Nathan if you knew the full truth," she said, tears beginning to stream down her face. "And because I'm ashamed of what happened at the hospital." "Tell me the whole truth," said Michael, trying to keep his voice calm despite the anger and disappointment he felt. Rachel took a deep breath before beginning. "After Ethan died, I went back to work because I needed money to pay his medical debts. But psychologically I was destroyed," she explained. "I saw my son in every child I cared for, especially those who were suffering." "Go on." "I started spending too much time with the patients, getting involved in their lives in ways that weren't professionally appropriate," she continued. "I slept in the rooms when the children had nightmares, argued with doctors when I thought they weren't doing enough, called families outside of work hours to check on them." Michael could see this came from a place of pain and love, but he also understood why it would be problematic in a hospital setting. "And about observing our family. Nathan reminded me so much of Ethan," she said, crying openly now. "The age, the vulnerability, the way you both were suffering. I knew I was crossing boundaries, but I couldn't pull away." "Did you follow us to the restaurant?" "No," she said quickly. "The meeting at the restaurant was genuinely a coincidence. I've worked there for 2 years, ever since I left the hospital. But I need to admit that after the first meeting, I started hoping you would come back." Michael tried to process all this information. On one hand, he felt manipulated and betrayed. On the other, he could see that Rachel was a deeply wounded woman who was trying to heal her own pain by helping others. "Rachel, do you understand why this is problematic?" "I understand," she sobbed. "And I hate myself for lying to you, but I swear my affection for Nathan and my dedication to the job are genuine. Everything I did was with his well-being in mind." "How can I trust you after this?" "I don't know if you can," she admitted honestly. "All I can say is that the last 2 months working with Nathan have been the happiest I've had since I lost Ethan. For the first time in 3 years, I feel like my life has purpose again." They sat in silence for several minutes. Michael was struggling internally. Nathan had improved immensely under Rachel's care, and it was obvious she genuinely cared for him. But the initial lie and the problematic behavior at the hospital raised serious questions about her judgment and emotional stability. "What do you want me to do now?" Rachel asked finally. "I don't know," Michael said honestly. "I need time to think about this, and I'll have to talk to Nathan too." "Please don't tell him I lied," begged Rachel. "He doesn't deserve to be hurt because of my mistakes. Rachel, Nathan needs to know the truth. I can't base decisions about his future on lies." "I know. You're right," she said, drying her tears. I really loved that boy, as if he were my own son. And there was the heart of the problem. Rachel wasn't lying about her feelings, but her ability to maintain healthy boundaries was compromised by her own pain. I'm going to give you a few days off so I can process all this and decide what's the best way to move forward, said Michael. It's not a firing, just a break so I can think clearly. Rachel nodded, understanding. She gathered her things quietly and headed for the door. Mr. Thompson, she said before leaving. Yes? Thank you for giving me the chance to know Nathan. Whatever happens from now on, these 2 months have been a gift to me. After she left, Michael sat on the couch, feeling emotionally exhausted. How would he explain the situation to Nathan? How would he balance his son's well-being with the need to maintain safe boundaries? He thought about calling a friend or a consultant to ask for advice, but he realized the decision was his. No one else knew all the nuances of the situation or could fully assess the risks and benefits. The next morning, Michael made the difficult decision to be completely honest with Nathan about the situation. He waited until after breakfast, when they were in the room where Nathan usually did his exercises with Rachel. Nathan, I need to talk to you about something important, he began. Where's Rachel? Asked Nathan, noticing that the time she usually arrived had already passed. That's what I need to talk about, said Michael, sitting down next to his son. I found out some things about Rachel's past that worry me. He explained the situation in a way appropriate for Nathan's age, focusing on the fact that Rachel had suffered a terrible loss and that it had affected her ability to make appropriate decisions in her previous job. Did she lie to you? Nathan asked when Michael finished. Yes, son. She didn't tell me the whole truth about why she left the hospital. Nathan was thoughtful for a long moment. Dad, do you remember when I lied to you about doing my homework right after the accident? Michael remembered. Nathan had said he had finished his physical therapy exercises when he hadn't even started them. I remember. Why did you lie back then? Because I was scared, Nathan said simply. Scared that you would get angry, scared of disappointing you, scared that things would get even worse. Michael began to understand where Nathan was going with this. Do you think Rachel lied because she was scared too? I think she was scared that you wouldn't let her help me, said Nathan. And I think she was scared of her own sadness, like I am sometimes. Nathan's emotional insight continued to surprise Michael. At 12 years old, the boy already understood that people sometimes make bad choices for understandable reasons. But Nathan, even if we understand why someone lies, that doesn't mean we can ignore the lie, Michael explained. Trust is very important in any relationship. I know, said Nathan. But Dad, Rachel really helped me. Look at everything I can do now. To demonstrate, Nathan performed a series of movements he couldn't do 2 months ago. He raised both arms, leaned forward and to the sides, and even managed to pick up an object from the floor next to his wheelchair. And it's not just physically, Nathan continued. I feel happier, stronger on the inside too. I think she did it because she really loves me. Michael was touched by his son's maturity, but also worried about his tendency to forgive easily. Aren't you angry with her for lying? I'm a little sad, Nathan admitted. But I also understand. Sometimes when we're suffering a lot, we do things that aren't right, but we do them out of love. It was a profound reflection for a child, and Michael realized that Nathan had learned this lesson through his own journey of pain and recovery. What do you think we should do? Talk to her, Nathan said without hesitation. Let her explain everything, and then decide if we can trust her again. And if we decide we can't trust her? Nathan was saddened by that possibility, but answered honestly, then we'll have to say goodbye, but I'd like to try trusting first. Michael spent the rest of the day thinking about the conversation. In the afternoon, he decided to call Rachel. Hello? Rachel, it's Michael. Nathan and I would like to talk to you. Can you come over this afternoon? Of course, she replied, her voice full of nervousness. What time? Is 4 o'clock all right? I'll be there. When Rachel arrived, Michael noticed she looked like she had been crying a lot. Her eyes were swollen and red, and she moved with the posture of someone who was preparing for bad news. Nathan was in the room when she entered, and his face lit up when he saw her. Rachel, he said, trying to move in his chair to get closer to her. Hi, my dear, she said, clearly trying to control her emotions. How are you? I missed you, said Nathan honestly. You didn't come yesterday. I know, sweetheart. Your father and I needed to talk about some grown-up things. Michael appreciated that she didn't try to make excuses or minimize the situation. Nathan already knows about our conversation yesterday, said Michael. I told him about your situation at the hospital. Rachel looked surprised but also relieved. What did you think, Nathan? I was sad that you didn't tell Dad the whole truth, said Nathan, but I understand why. Rachel knelt down in front of Nathan's wheelchair, putting herself at his eye level. Nathan, I'm so sorry for lying, she said, tears running down her face. You deserve honesty from all the adults in your life. It's okay, said Nathan, reaching out to touch her arm. Can you tell me about Ethan? The question took Rachel by surprise. Michael hadn't specifically mentioned her son during his conversation with Nathan. What do you want to know? If he was like me. If you two were happy together before he got sick. Rachel smiled through her tears. He was a lot like you. Smart, brave, and had a huge heart, she said. And yes, we were very happy. He liked to draw, just like you, and he was always making jokes to make me laugh. Do you ever draw his drawings? How did you know that? Because I draw Mom sometimes, explained Nathan, when I miss her. Michael was surprised. He didn't know that Nathan drew Jennifer. Can you show me those drawings someday? Asked Rachel. I can. And can you show me Ethan's? Of course, if your father allows it. Nathan looked at Michael expectantly. Can we try one more time, Dad? Please? Michael looked at the two of them. Nathan, clearly hopeful, but prepared to accept any decision. Rachel, vulnerable, but not making promises she couldn't keep. Rachel, if we decide to continue, I need your word that there will be no more lies or omissions, he said. No matter how uncomfortable the truth is. You have it, she said without hesitation. And I need you to consider seeking professional help to deal with your own grief, not as a condition for working with us, but because I think it would be good for you. Rachel nodded, clearly having already thought about it. I've already made an appointment with a psychologist for next week. Good. And lastly, we need to establish clearer boundaries about your role in our lives. You are not Nathan's mother, and you shouldn't try to be. I understand, said Rachel. I don't want to replace anyone. I just want to help Nathan be the best version of himself. Michael looked at Nathan, who was smiling hopefully. All right, he said finally. We'll try again. But this time, with complete honesty between all of us. Nathan let out a joyful shout and managed to clap several times in a row, something he couldn't do before Rachel started working with him. Does that mean you're coming back tomorrow? He asked eagerly. If your father agrees, yes, said Rachel, looking at Michael. I agree, he confirmed, but let's start slowly and see how things develop. In the weeks that followed, the dynamic at home changed again. This time there was more openness and honesty between everyone. Rachel talked more about Ethan and her own journey of grief, which helped Nathan process his own feelings about the loss of Jennifer better. Michael also became more involved in Nathan's rehabilitation process, participating in the exercises whenever possible, and learning the techniques that Rachel used. This strengthened the relationship between father and son in a way that hadn't happened since the car accident. Dorothy observed these changes with cautious approval. She was still vigilant, but had to admit that Nathan continued to improve both physically and emotionally. I think you made the right decision, she said to Michael one evening, as they watched Nathan show Rachel a drawing he had made. Why? Because Nathan is learning that people can make mistakes and still be worthy of love and trust, explained Dorothy. It's an important lesson for a child who has been through so much trauma. Michael agreed. In many ways, the situation with Rachel had taught all of them about forgiveness, second chances, and the complexity of human motivations. 1 month after the reconciliation, Nathan reached an important milestone. He managed to transfer from his wheelchair to a regular chair for a few minutes, with only minimal support. It was progress that no doctor had said was possible. How do you feel? Asked Rachel, when he managed to stay seated in the regular chair for 5 full minutes. Like I could do anything, replied Nathan, beaming with pride. Michael watched the scene with gratitude and admiration. Nathan had come a long way from the quiet, withdrawn boy he had been after the accident. And although the physical progress was impressive, the emotional transformation was even more remarkable. That night, while putting Nathan to bed, the boy asked an unexpected question. "Dad, do you like Rachel?" "Of course I like her. She takes very good care of you." "No, Dad, do you like her like you liked Mom?" The question caught Michael completely off guard. He had focused so much on Rachel's benefits for Nathan that he hadn't considered his own feelings for her. "Why are you asking that?" "Because you two look happy when you're together," Nathan said simply, "and because Mom always said that love never ends, it just finds new places to live." Michael fell silent, processing his son's words. It was true that he felt different when Rachel was around, lighter, more hopeful. But he had attributed those feelings to Nathan's improvement, not to his own romantic feelings. "Nathan, even if I did feel something like that for Rachel, it would be very complicated," he said carefully. "Why?" "Because she works for us, and because you depend on her for your therapy. Mixing romantic feelings with that could make everything very confusing." Nathan thought about this for a moment. "But Dad, you said we should be honest about our feelings now." Touché. Michael had said exactly that when they were establishing the new rules with Rachel. "You're right about honesty," admitted Michael, "but some feelings are too complicated to act on immediately." "Okay," said Nathan, "but Dad?" "Yes? I think Mom would be happy if you were happy again, and I think she would like Rachel." It was a touching and insightful observation. Jennifer had truly valued people who cared for others, especially children, and she had always said that she wanted Michael to find happiness again if anything happened to her. That night, Michael lay awake thinking about the conversation with Nathan. Were his feelings for Rachel obvious to everyone except himself? And if they were, what should he do about it? In the following days, Michael began to pay more attention to his interactions with Rachel. He noticed that he eagerly awaited her arrival every morning, that he enjoyed their casual conversations during the day, and that he missed her on the weekends when she wasn't working. There was a natural chemistry between them, an ease of communication that went beyond their collaboration in caring for Nathan. They shared similar values, had gone through comparable experiences of loss, and clearly respected each other. But Michael was also aware of the risks. What if a romantic relationship didn't work out? It could destroy the progress Nathan had made. And there were ethical questions about getting romantically involved with someone who depended on him financially. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the conversation with Nathan, Michael came home and found Rachel in the kitchen preparing a snack for Nathan. She was humming softly and seemed happy and relaxed. "Hi," she said when she saw him. "How was your day?" "Good. And yours?" "Nathan managed to stand for almost 10 seconds today, holding onto the railing," she said excitedly. "He's making incredible progress." Michael smiled, but noticed he was more focused on the sparkle in her eyes than the news about Nathan. "Rachel, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Have you ever thought about getting romantically involved with someone again, after Ethan?" She stopped preparing the snack and looked at him with surprise. "Honestly, I didn't think it was possible," she said. "For a long time I felt like all my ability to love had died with him. And now, I don't know," she replied, blushing slightly. "Caring for Nathan has shown me that I still have love to give. But romantic love? That still scares me a little." It was an honest and vulnerable answer. Michael appreciated that she hadn't tried to dodge the question or give a superficial response. "Why are you asking?" she said. Michael hesitated. Once he said the words, there would be no going back. "Because I think I'm developing feelings for you that go beyond gratitude for what you've done for Nathan." Rachel completely stopped what she was doing and turned to face him fully. "Michael, I know it's complicated," he said quickly, "and I don't want to pressure you in any way. But Nathan made me realize that I can't pretend I don't feel anything. Does Nathan know you feel this way?" "He made an observation that made me stop and think about my feelings," admitted Michael. "And he said something about his mother wanting me to be happy again." Rachel moved closer to him, stopping just a few steps away. And you? Do you want to be happy again? I do, he said honestly. But more than that, I want you to be happy too. And I want Nathan to keep progressing. If my feelings for you complicate any of those things, I'd rather keep them to myself. And if they don't complicate things, then maybe we can explore what's between us, said Michael. Rachel was silent for a long moment, clearly processing the conversation. Can I be honest about something? Please. I have feelings for you too, she admitted. They started as gratitude for giving me a second chance, but they've turned into something deeper. Michael felt his heart speed up. But I'm afraid, Rachel continued, afraid that if things don't work out between us, Nathan will be hurt, and afraid of opening my heart again after so much pain. Those are valid fears, said Michael, and I share them. So what do we do? Let's take it slow, he suggested. We keep prioritizing Nathan, but we also give ourselves a chance to see where these feelings lead. How would we do that? By starting with total honesty with Nathan. He already suspects anyway. And then perhaps occasional dinners together, longer conversations, time to get to know each other as adults, not just as Nathan's caregivers. Rachel smiled for the first time since the conversation began. I think I'd like that. Before either of them could say another word, they heard Nathan calling from the living room. Rachel, Dad, come see what I managed to do. They exchanged a look and laughed. Nathan and his needs were still the priority, as it should be. When they entered the living room, they found Nathan trying to get up from his wheelchair, using only the support of a nearby table. He was managing to stand for longer periods than before. Did you see? He said, proud. I got up 3 times in a row. Congratulations, son, said Michael, genuinely impressed. Nathan, that's amazing, added Rachel. Your leg muscles are really responding to the exercises. You know what else? Said Nathan, a mischievous smile appearing on his face. I think you two like each other. Michael and Rachel exchanged a look, both blushing. Why do you think that? Asked Michael. Because you're smiling like people in love in the movies, said Nathan, with the brutal honesty of children. And because when you talk you forget I'm here. They laughed, realizing Nathan was much more observant than they had imagined. And what do you think about that? Asked Rachel. I think it would be nice, Nathan said sincerely, because then you'd both be happy, and happy people take better care of other people. It was simple but solid logic. Nathan had learned through his own experience that the emotional well-being of the adults around him directly affected his own quality of life. But we have to take it slow, added Nathan, to make sure it's going to work out before making big changes. Michael was impressed by his son's maturity. At 12 years old, Nathan was showing more emotional wisdom than many adults. I agree, said Michael. Let's see how things develop naturally. In the weeks that followed, Michael and Rachel began to explore their feelings carefully and gradually. They had dinner together a few times after Nathan went to sleep, had long conversations about their lives, dreams, and fears, and began to know each other as people beyond their roles, as Nathan's father and his caregiver. Michael discovered that Rachel had a dry sense of humor that made him laugh, that she enjoyed reading historical novels, and that she dreamed of opening her own therapy center for children with special needs. Rachel learned that Michael was more sensitive than he appeared, that he had abandoned his own hobbies after the loss of Jennifer, and that he had a deep fear of not being an adequate father for Nathan. Nathan watched these changes with obvious approval. He commented on how his parents, as he began to call Michael and Rachel, seemed happier, more relaxed, more present. And his own progress continued, as if the growing harmony in the house created an even more favorable environment for his recovery. 3 months after the initial conversation about feelings, Michael and Rachel shared their first kiss. It was on an evening after Nathan had managed to take 3 steps supported only by a cane, a milestone no doctor had predicted would be possible. I can't believe his progress, said Rachel, still emotional about Nathan's achievement. It's because of you, said Michael. You gave him back hope. Both of us. It was a team effort, she corrected. Nathan had the determination, you provided the love and support. I just gave a few techniques. It was much more than techniques, said Michael, moving closer to her. You brought life back into this house. When they kissed, It was with tenderness and gratitude. Two adults who had found love again after devastating losses. It wasn't the burning passion of youth, but something deeper and more appreciative, tempered by experience and suffering. "I'm ready for this," whispered Rachel when they separated. "So am I," replied Michael. They decided to tell Nathan about the development of their relationship the next morning. When they sat down with him after breakfast, Nathan listened carefully and then smiled widely. "Finally," he said. "I thought you two would never get up the courage to kiss." "How did you know we kissed?" asked Michael, surprised. "You both have that look people get after they've kissed for the first time," explained Nathan. Happy, but a little nervous. Nathan's perception continued to surprise them. In the months that followed, the non-traditional family they had formed continued to flourish. Nathan made physical progress that defied all initial medical expectations. He began to take short steps with a cane, managed to regain limited but significant movement in his legs, and developed strength and coordination in his arms that allowed him much greater independence. Most importantly, he was emotionally healthy and happy. He spoke openly about Jennifer and Ethan, had made friends with other children in the neighborhood, and even expressed interest in returning to a regular school the following year. Michael transformed from a bitter, closed-off man into an involved and optimistic father. He began attending support groups for parents of children with special needs, resumed some hobbies he had abandoned, and even considered career changes that would allow him to spend more time with his family. Rachel flourished both personally and professionally. She continued seeing the psychologist, processed her grief in a healthier way, and began seriously planning her dream of opening a therapy center. Most importantly, she learned to love again without trying to replace what she had lost. 6 months after they started dating, Michael proposed to Rachel. It wasn't a traditional proposal with an expensive ring at a fancy restaurant. It was on a Sunday afternoon when the three of them were at the park and Nathan managed to run a few yards with his canes for the first time. "Rachel," said Michael when Nathan was playing with other children, "will you marry us?" "Us?" she asked, laughing. "Nathan and me. Do you want to officially be a part of this crazy family we formed?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation. 1,000 times yes. When they told Nathan, he insisted on being the best man at the wedding. "After all," he said with his irrefutable logic, "I'm the one who brought you two together." The wedding was simple, held in the backyard with just a few close friends and colleagues. Nathan gave a speech as the best man, thanking Rachel for saving his family and promising to be the best son to both of them. During the ceremony, Michael and Rachel included Jennifer and Ethan in their vows, acknowledging that the love for those they had lost did not diminish the love they felt for each other, but rather enriched it. Dorothy cried throughout the entire ceremony, finally admitting that Rachel had become an unexpected blessing in their lives. 1 year after the wedding, Nathan was walking short distances without any support. He had returned to school, was making friends, and had even started playing an adaptive sport. Most importantly, he was a happy and confident child who saw his physical limitations as challenges to be overcome, not as insurmountable barriers. Michael had changed his career, investing in an assistive technology company that developed equipment for people with disabilities. It was a way to combine his business knowledge with his passion for a cause that had become central to his life. Rachel opened her therapy center, which quickly became a reference in the region. She hired other professionals who shared her philosophy of holistic care and began training other caregivers in her innovative techniques. One afternoon, 2 years after their first meeting at the restaurant, the three of them were in the same park where Michael and Rachel had had so many important conversations. Nathan was playing with a dog they had recently adopted, running in small but determined circles. "Do you regret anything?" Rachel asked Michael. "Taking so long to let you into our lives," he replied. "And you?" "Lying at the beginning," she said. "But I don't regret insisting. Sometimes love requires us to be brave, even when we're scared." Nathan came running over to them, out of breath but smiling. "Daddy, Mommy Rachel, can we have dinner at that restaurant where we met?" he asked. "Why?" asked Michael. "To thank the place where our family really began," Nathan replied. They went to dinner at the restaurant, now as a complete family. The manager who had given Rachel trouble no longer worked there, and the current staff welcomed them happily, knowing the story of how they had met. During dinner, Nathan made a toast with his juice. "To families that form in different ways," he said, raising his glass, "and to people who don't give up on each other." Michael and Rachel toasted with him, knowing that Nathan had perfectly summarized the extraordinary journey they had shared. Later that night, when Nathan was asleep, Michael and Rachel sat in the garden of the house watching the stars. "You know what's funny?" said Rachel. "I used to be afraid of the future after I lost Ethan. Now I can hardly wait to see what comes next." "What comes next," said Michael, taking her hand, "is a whole lifetime of small miracles, like seeing Nathan run, like building our therapy center together, like maybe giving Nathan a little brother or sister in the future." "You would like that?" asked Rachel. "To have another child?" "With you?" "Absolutely," replied Michael. "Nathan would be an amazing big brother." They were silent for a moment, contemplating the possibilities the future held. "Michael," said Rachel. "Yes?" "Thank you for giving me a second chance. For giving us a second chance." "Thank you for never giving up on us," he replied. Inside the house, Nathan slept soundly, dreaming of all the adventures he would have with his ever-stronger legs. In his dreams, Jennifer and Ethan smiled, happy to have helped create a new family where lost love had found new hearts to dwell in. Their story was proof that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as losses, and that true love has the power not only to heal wounds, but to transform tragedies into triumphs, loneliness into family, and hopelessness into deep and lasting joy. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this moving story. Do you believe love can really transform lives like that? Leave in the comments which part moved you the most, and if you've ever been through a similar situation. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like for more stories that touch the heart.